Okay, the second dimensional analysis video in this playlist is all about converting complex units. Complex units means that the units are like the derived units that we talked about, and those contain a numerator and a denominator. Density has a complex unit, gram per milliliter, or gram per centimeter cubed. Okay, speeds, which in physics you'll know as velocity, are miles per hour, or mph, or kilometers per hour. Or we can do meters per second, inches per second, etc., etc. Pressure, we use PSI here in the United States, which stands for pounds per square inch. But when you have these complex units, you can use the dimensions to convert them, but you have to do the numerator and the denominator separately in dimensional analysis. It can all be in one big problem, but you have to attack each part individually. All right, so let's start with a pretty simple, straightforward answer right here, problem right here, and that is how fast is 100 kilometers per hour in miles per hour? And probably the biggest mistake that people make is this kilometers per hour is actually kilometers on top and hours on the bottom, meaning kilometers is my numerator and hours is my denominator. So what I want to do is I can change this hour into 1 hour, because this is saying per 1 hour here. So what I'm looking to do in this problem is convert kilometers per hour into miles per hour. So what is actually changing here? The only thing that's actually changing here is our numerator. We can leave our denominator big. All right, so we just need a conversion between kilometers and miles. And how do I do that? 1 mile is equal to 1.6 kilometers. And just as I had gone over in previous ones, if we have 100 kilometers per hour, okay, you can kind of cover this up and pretend it's not even here, and then just attack this problem just like we've done any kind of dimensional analysis. You start with that given, the given is where you go, and then you just put your conversion factor and place it so that kilometers cancel out. Well, how does that happen? We put 1.6 kilometers on the bottom and 1 mile up top. And what that allows is for kilometers and kilometers to cancel out. And then if I look back under here, I will have miles per hour as my unit. And that's exactly what I have in my unknown right here. So how do I solve this? I solve this by putting in the calculator exactly what we have before, which is you start with your numerator 100 times 1, divide by 1, and then divide by 1.6. And we should get an answer of 62.5. So please go get your calculator, push pause, try plugging that in, and see if you get 62.5. Oh, you're back. Yay. Okay, so also one thing that we have to keep track of is there should be a decimal point here. There are 3 sig figs here, so there are 3 sig figs in my answer. All right, so here we go. So how fast is 100 kilometers per hour in miles per hour? Kilometers is going to cancel out with kilometers, leaving miles per hour, and our answer is 62.5 miles per hour. Okay, so example 2 gets a little bit tougher because now we are going to change the numerator and the denominator. So in this one, we want to know how many inches per second do you cover if you're traveling at 100 miles per hour. 100 miles per hour is pretty fast. Okay, so this again is miles per hour. Make sure that hour goes in the denominator. Oftentimes when they're written in problems, they look like they're on the same line and kids cancel out hours by putting it in the wrong spot. And we want to convert it into inches per second. So I am changing my numerator and I am changing my denominator. Okay, so miles into inches and hours into seconds. All right, so how do I change my numerator? I change my numerator by putting 1 mile is equal to 5,280 feet and 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. I have two conversion factors there. Okay, for my denominator, I have to change hours into seconds. 1 hour is 60 minutes and 1 minute is 60 seconds. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 conversion factors. So like we saw in the previous video, when you have that many conversion factors, that's how many dimensions you write out. Okay, so again, we start with the given 100 and the decimal point because we have to do our sig figs. Okay, miles per 1 hour, and then we have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 conversion factors. So we do 4 dimensions. Okay, so just as we saw in the previous example, okay, kind of ignore this 1 hour right now. All right, what I like to do is I like to put my finger over top of it when I'm teaching on the board, but just kind of forget it's there. We'll undo that in a little bit. Okay, and convert the numerator the way that you normally would. 1 mile is 5,280 feet. So I put 1 mile here, 5,280 feet. I cancel out my miles and I use that conversion factor. Next, I'm going to get rid of feet. So I put 1 foot on the bottom, 12 inches on the top. I cancel out feet and feet. Voila, we are good to go. Now I have inches in my numerator, which is exactly what I want. So now what we're going to do is we're going to erase what I canceled out or uncover what's here in the denominator, the 1 hour. If I want to cancel out 2 units, I have to make sure they're on opposite sides. So if I want to cancel out hours, I need to put hours on top over here. 1 hour equals 60 minutes. So 1 hour goes here, 60 minutes goes in the denominator. And what that does is it cancels out hours and hours. And I use that information, leaving minutes in the denominator now. But I don't want inches per minute, I want inches per second. So I have to do one more conversion factor. 1 minute is 60 seconds. Minutes is in the denominator. I put 1 minute up top, 60 seconds on the bottom. And then I have minutes and minutes cancel out, leaving seconds in the denominator, which is exactly what I have here in my unknown. Awesome. So now that we're here, how do I calculate this? How do I put this in the calculator? Multiply everything on top, divide by everything on the bottom. So I put 100 times 5,280 times 12, and then you can put times 1, then do divided by 1, divided by 1, divided by 1, and then divided by 60 and divided by 60. Please go get your calculator, go see what you get, and what we see as our final answer is 1760 inches per second. Okay, and this has 3 sig figs, so does this. You can also put 1.76 times 10 to the third inches per second if you would like. That's the same thing. All right, so to see that again, what we're doing is we are calculating our miles and converting those by putting miles on the bottom, 5,280 feet, then get rid of feet and feet here. 12 inches is 1 foot. Remember, a proportion is the same on the top and the bottom. It's just when you multiply them, do they change? Then we end up having hours and hours cancel out. And lastly, we have our minutes and minutes cancel out. So what that leaves is inches per second, which is exactly what we want over here. All right, multiply everything on top, divide by everything on the bottom. Voila, bingo bango, you have your stuff. All right, so let's try a last problem, a third problem here. How many MPS, so this is meters per second, is a car traveling at 25 miles per hour? Okay, so if you need to write it over here. I'm changing miles per hour into meters per second. So I need conversion factors for my numerator, and I need conversion factors for my denominator. All right, so what are my numerator ones? My numerator ones are miles and meters. So I have 1 mile is equal to 1.6 kilometers. I know that. And then I know that 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. What about denominators? Okay, 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes, or 1 minute is equal to 60 seconds. If you know the conversion factor immediately, you can also say 1 hour is equal to 3,600 seconds or 3,600 seconds, which is just 60 times 60. So if you want to save yourself a step, you can do that also. And then we solve. When we solve, just like every other time, you take your given, you start with that, 25 miles per hour, which is the same as per 1 hour. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 conversion factors, so I'm going to use 4 dimensions. I'm going to put miles as my numerator, so that means I need to put 1 mile on the bottom, 1.6 kilometers on top. Cancel out my miles. Then I'm going to convert my kilometers. 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. And I'm going to cancel out kilometers here, leaving my lovely meters off the top. Then I can attack my hours on the bottom. 1 hour on top, 60 minutes on the bottom, so that they cancel out, hours and hours. And then lastly, convert 1 minute, 60 seconds, and I get minutes and minutes to cancel out, leaving meters per second. Okay, that's what my answer will be in meters per second. So how do I put this in the calculator? Just like before, multiply the entire numerator, divide by the entire denominator, hit enter only once. 25 times 1.6 times 1,000 times 1 times 1 divided by 1 divided by 1 divided by 1 divided by 60 divided by 60 equals 11. Same number of sig figs. 11 meters per second has 2 sig figs, so does 25. So to see that all written out for you, voila, we have our 25 miles per hour that end up canceling out here. Then we have our kilometers and kilometers to cancel out, leaving meters up top. Then we're going to cancel out our hours and hours. And lastly, minutes and minutes, leaving seconds on the bottom. And that gives us meters in the numerator, seconds in the denominator, and there they are. Multiply by each thing, divide by each denominator, hit enter only once. You don't have to hit enter more than once. Don't take the whole numerator, enter, divide it by the whole denominator, enter, and then plug everything in. This saves time. Enter it only once. Pro tip for you. And that is dimensional analysis with complex units.